Hello, welcome back from the lunch break. We're going to start our second seminar session for the third day of Innovate Heritage now. And our sessions, we have 3 sessions simultaneously again today, and the other 2 will be uploaded early next week, so you can watch those with the people online. And this next session is the theme storytelling. And we have 2 amazing speakers. We have first, we have Jazmyne Koch from Hawaii, who's based in Hamburg currently, a really amazing artist performer. And then we will hear from Ann O'Dowd, who is the technical director of the Northwest Folklife Festival. So the format will be that they each present and then engage in dialogue and questions with each other, and then we'll have hopefully an open discussion. So please welcome Jazmyne to the stage. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Innovate Heritage, for adding me into the program. It was, I know, last minute, but I'm really happy to be a part of this weekend of discussion. And yeah, and I'm happy to share, too, about my experiences and also background. So yes, thank you for the introduction. I would consider myself as far as studies, I was cultural anthropology and also dance, and so I have a performance and also kind of a research background as well. So I'll just present some ideas involving that. And so for today, I'm talking about the contemporary realities of Hawaiian performing arts and the role of cultural identity. Yes. For the first part, I'm going to give a little background because I'm not going to assume that everyone knows a ton about Hawaii, and if you do, I'm really, really happy. But I think it's just good as a basis so you can understand my talk and where I'm coming from. So just a quick overview with the Hawaiian Islands. I'm showing both flags, so this is what's considered was more of the traditional representation of the flag before contact with colonization, and also when we became a state. So this is our current flag, and this was the past one, just to show you differences. A little bit about the Hawaiian Islands. So we are the most isolated archipelago in the world, and we have 8 main islands, which 7 are inhabited and by people. But it's an archipelago of thousands of islands. The population is around 1,360,301, and most live on Oahu. And you've probably heard of the city Honolulu, which is our state capital. And that, as you can see, it holds 953,207. So that's a lot of the majority of population versus the other islands. And I'm from Maui, so that's this one here. Yeah, and so with that being said, this census was probably taken around maybe 2012, so it might be a little bit different now, but this was for a past research presentation I was giving. As far as demographics, I just wanted to show you an outline of where it kind of flows the most. You see Asian has the most with 38.6, and then it's white, Caucasian is the next. Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, 10%, which can be surprising. American Indian, Alaska, 0.3 with that influence. And look at, if you see the Hispanic Latino, it's 8.9 and rising, so that's an interesting introduction for that. Others, 1.2% would be considered South Americans, Europeans, maybe Southeast Asians, other groups that are just coming into Hawaii more. On the bottom, this is good to note. The 2 or more races is 23.6%, and this is an important thing to highlight because we're considered the most multi-ethnic state within the United States of America. We have the highest percentage of multiracial people, children, and so that says a lot about the diversity of the culture there. Cool. So my thesis, which I'll talk a little bit in the following slides, but my thesis looked at the cultural identity in Hawaii, and particularly to terms and identity labels. So I'll kind of just give some of that in the next slides. So this is just, I was showing the representation of Hawaiian culture in past terms, and maybe some ideas of the senses you get on tourism brochures or some ideas. And so it's kind of representing a Polynesian fusion and, you know, a oneness perspective, which in the long run, yeah, it kind of diminishes and puts down the actual Hawaiian culture, and it just gets kind of confused. And so when people see Hawaiian culture and they go, hula, hula, I'm like, okay. And let me just correct that a little bit. And, you know, but it's very understandable, is what I would say. All right, so with that, the Native Hawaiian cultural renaissance, I think this is also an important thing to note. Of course, it was regaining in 60s, but really in the 70s came out like with the movement. There was a creation of strength and unity, identity as a group. Also pride and ownership of being Hawaiian and having ownership of the land. So with this became the renewal of practices, such as, the language. There was more people enrolled in universities learning Hawaiian, more people in halaus, in the schools of hula dance, trying to learn the practices of old ways, and forms of song, and I would say poetry and such. And so this was to regain native rights to land and environment. I just will read a quote from George Kanahele, which was one of the active parts of the activism. He's also a scholar. He passed away, but I just will share what he wrote. He put on the Hawaiian Renaissance: "It is the most significant chapter in 20th century Hawaiian history. Why? Because it has reversed years of cultural decline. It has created a new kind of Hawaiian consciousness. It has inspired greater pride in being Hawaiian. We still are alive, that our culture has survived the onslaughts of change during the past 200 years. Indeed, not only has it survived, it is now thriving." So he said that in 1979. And what I would like to add is, now I'd like to put in the present terms of now we're in 2014. And as far as movements go, it's been really, I would say, a slower process in the past years. And I would say my generation of the keikis, the kids of these, I would say, fighters, these activists, and also cultural practitioners, they're in a stage of wanting change, but it's getting to a point of, I feel, a little bit more aggressive as far as sovereignty and wanting some kind of action to take place. You can read more about it. I'm not going to go so much into it, but there's a thing called the Akaka Bill, and that has been going since 2009. And its movement, I mean, it's 2014, and it's still going in the Senate and doing different things. So that's an interesting thing to note. So today we're still in this experience of Hawaiian pride and sovereignty, but it's sometimes taken negatively and portrayed negatively. Good. Oh, yeah, before that, I would just like to go a little bit on my thesis. Just a little insert with that. So talking about cultural identity as far as this generation. So my thesis looked at students that were from 19 through 29 and from the University of Hawaii, so on Oahu, and also some students on Maui. And what I was looking at is identity with labels. So how do you identify yourself? What label would you say? So I had them write down their ethnicity and also what label they associate themselves with. And I had an interesting conclusion where multiracial or part Hawaiians, actually, instead of choosing the word hapa I was looking at, which is meaning half, and it referred to half of things. So haole is a foreigner, and foreigner, it's become a different connotation with it now, and a discriminating kind of sound to haole, but haole used to be referring to all foreigners, so foreigners from the Hawaiian Islands. So if you were also Polynesian, if you came from Tahiti or different places, you were also haole because you were foreign from the actual land of Hawaii, yeah? So, but this is now referring more to Caucasian white people, and it's also taken in kind of derogatory terms, sometimes. So this was interesting to look at with hapa haole, because with colonization and also missionaries before, just in the history, you of course get a product of mixed kids. And as I was saying, now we have even more of a mix because we had immigrants from Asia for sugar plantation, pineapple plantation, things like that. So you have all these influences of culture and you're having mixed children. So the amount of pure Hawaiians with pure Hawaiian blood is diminishing and just going lower based off that. So with these kids in this age group, a lot of them labeled themselves as Hawaiian, native, local, or kanaka oiwi. So these are really political terms, I would say, in a sense of identifying with their Hawaiian side and not really taking part that maybe they're, Irish and also Portuguese and Puerto Rican, things like that. So it's taking place with this idea of we're Hawaiians and we're trying to have our rights back. So that was an interesting project. And with this, I would like to go into this project because it was an interesting time for this. It is within this Pacific decolonization movement, I call it, and then also this Hawaiian pride. So I did an internship in 2011 in the summer, and so I'm going now into Hawaii tourism, based economy, and I'll talk more about the dance because this is the backdrop. So I kind of gave you the culture, and now we're jumping into more examples. I'm just showing you quickly Mo'olelo, the storytelling, the histories of Hawaiian narratives. This is also good, so when you compare it with my work, what my inspirations are. So it's oral history like many other cultures that you pass. It's an oral tradition that you pass down. Your history is your knowledge. The narratives are about places, place names, why it's special, why it's named that. They're for high chiefs, kings, queens, dedicated to them, a mele, a song, a dance, passion, attraction, procreation. This is also, it's regenerating the culture, so that's also something we dance about. Also war and battle, because that was also a part of life. And also ceremonial, so for aumakua, for ancestors, for nature, for all living things that were present in the environment. Okay? Good. So, I just will zip through this. I mean, the Hawaiian luau, I was putting this up as to ask some questions as, why do we continue to perpetuate the misrepresentation of Hawaiian culture? And if you ever been to a luau or heard of a luau, it's, it's a feast that is now held daily for tourists, which is really unusual in the past. Now it's a feast coming together with dance and song and food. And so now in Hawaii we have probably 20 pigs being killed or more a day just for having these feasts for tourists that are coming in. And so it's an interesting thing where, it used to be for special occasions you're coming in for certain times of the year, and now it's being done on a daily basis. So we're looking at what sells in tourism, what's considered entertaining. You're dealing with issues, of course, eroticism, exoticism, magic, exciting. And also the views of Hawaii as a getaway paradise, vacation, home, sweet escape, things like this, yeah? Also, I was proposing, this was from my past research, about the tourism trends. And I was talking with someone, I think Denise or someone the other day about this, but that, traveling is changing now, and I feel that there's a group of more conscious people that are wanting to see cultures for what they really are. And they don't want to just show up, at Waikiki on a beach and think, oh, am I in Fiji, am I in the Caribbean or Hawaii? All I know is I have a drink in my hand, I'm on a beach. So, Yeah, now there's more of a statement, I think, to travel and how you travel, and that says about you as a person. So, yeah, I just got this from Rates to Go. You are where you travel and how you travel. And so this applies to the internship I was doing. So I was working with the Walt Disney Company. I was working on their hotel called Aulani, a Disney resort and spa in Ko'olina, which is on the southwest side of Oahu. It's far away from Waikiki, which gives it an interesting feel, also more in the local area. But there's also hotels over there. This is just the outlay of the whole property. So this is, when I signed up to do this and I heard about, I got the position to do this, I was thinking, oh great, I'm thinking about Disney's past culture representation and thinking, oh, what are they going to create? We don't need another thing. Is it going to be Lilo and Stitch theme? Oh boy, help me. So this was some ideas of, I wasn't really sure what to expect and where they're going to go with that. But I was wrong, luckily. Here's some pictures. I would suggest maybe going online. You can see better images, but this is an overview. Just briefly, the vision of the project. So when I came in, Disney wanted to create a hotel, and of course they want to maintain their own storytelling, right? Their own stories of maintaining the quality of magic and having a family-oriented hotel. So at the same time, we're trying to tell true stories about place, about tradition and the culture, and the significance, it is to Native Hawaiians. So we're dealing with two different cultures. Also authenticity, that visitors arrive at some place. They're not just anywhere, but they're at this place and they're gonna learn about it. Also showcasing continuations of contemporary Hawaiian culture. This was big, that it's not a dead thing and we're not dancing and thinking about nostalgic past, but that Hawaiians live today. So yeah, that's what it is, and also embodying the values of Hawaiian culture. So this was Disney's vision. And for me, I feel they did accomplish it in terms of it being the first corporation to deal with this culture on this level. And I would say that it is a lot of negotiating in space, and I know Anne will also go over how to, about this theme of working with, organizations or things and also culture. But yeah, I just was putting this out for some points that, I mean, these were their accomplishments, in my opinion, that also they were trying to involve the local community as much as they could as far as providing jobs only to people that live there first, and also including them in the process. So issues presented in entertainment. So, okay, I'm working under a corporation. I'm working within culture. We're trying to represent Native Hawaiian identity, and you're trying to protect your personal identity of being someone from there, especially if you're Hawaiian in the community. How you stand in that community. And also ownership. Who owns mele's? Who owns songs? Who owns dances? Who has the rights to those? Working under corporation. We have the problems, of course, with selling culture. Fusing cultural goals together for a compromise. There's always a fine line of compromise. Not everyone gets their way. Also staying true to the culture and being real to the environment. So those were things we always were negotiating, I would say. And you have to be flexible in the process as well. Working within culture is challenging because there's politics, always. There's opinions and ideas. Within the Hawaiian community, it's the practitioners that oversee all aspects. And, you're talking with different elders, with leaders, and people also have their own opinion of who gives you the right to, make that decision on the behalf of our community. So these are things we're dealing with. Also, if it's offensive to Hawaiians, and how to express a culture in 25-minute performance, which, I think we'll talk about, both of us too. Good. So identity, showing integrity as a dancer, as a performer. How do you show the dance, the Hawaiian dance, the energetic part of it? The performance on stage. Peter Espiritu, who was my creative director I was under, he would tell his dancers. He was part Hawaiian. He's part Hawaiian and also Samoan. And he was choreographing this piece, and he told them, you got to put your heart into it, and you're representing the people of Hawaii. And you're thinking, okay, that's a big statement. Interesting. But that's where it's coming from. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of talked about this, but you're projecting your personal Hawaiian identity. So you have a name, and you're also attached to the resort. So if you're famous, we had a lot of contemporary artists. We had Kayla Iraishal, we had Aaron Salah, we had Peter Espiritu, a lot of named and known people in the contemporary world as far as music, dance, things of that sort, as well as contemporary sculptures and visual artists. So now you're attached to a name like Disney and Aulani, and how does that stand for you and your identity, and also for your community? So these are just things. Lineage, where are you from? All these things play into the cultural dynamics in Hawaii. It's all about where you're from. It's all about who you know, who's your family, and what part of the island you're, and where you grew up, and how long you know the culture and the language. Okay. So I have a video. I just will show you a quick from the Starlit Hui performance that we did. Hopefully I can do this. Technology biz. I'm just going to wing through it. So there's, you'll see.
The teacher always told me you can't keep a beautiful look to yourself. You have to share it. So come on, let's all share.
Okay.
Come on. There we go.
Yay. Now you can see what I'm watching.
Enjoy the beauty of this place, Haulani. This song is indeed called the Haulani Hula, a special hula for us here. It's easy to follow. We'll help you out. Come on down. Enjoy the beauty of this place, Haulani. This song is indeed called the
Obviously, we're having some technical difficulties. Sorry about that.
Haulani Hula.
Sorry. It's a shame. You wish you'd see it. I hope it works. It's interesting because, you know, we're trying to tell a story and also make it entertaining, right? So this was the goal. It was there.
Oh, there it is. Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. I don't know if I can fast view, but I just give you. Now my screen's black.
So if you just watch this, so if you hit.
Thank you. As you see, technology is not my strong point.
A special hula for us here. It's easy to follow. We'll help you out. Come on down.
It's for the kids. Yeah, this point. Learn how to look.
You may recognize this tune as Curly Shells, but before there were any English words put to it, it was an old song called Pupu A'o Eva. Alright, now have fun and enjoy
So Pupu A'oeva is a traditional, it's a song used in the Hawaiian culture. So we're using it for the performance. So you can see it has showy effects, but you know, also these are Hawaiian awana, modern hula movements, yeah. So this is the kahiko style, and it's usually not shown in luau's in the presentations to tourists. So this is also interesting to see, I think, for visitors. Talking about the sea creatures. Just go to the end.
Oi! Seeing birds at sea is a ho'ailona, a sign. Birds lead you to where the fish are.
So there's modern aspects you'll see with Disney. They always have some kind of puppeting or visuals that create something. So this was also coming together with costuming. There's Disney aspects for sure, and also cultural aspects. Okay,
Go back.
going back.
There we go. Hold on.
As I was saying, I'm a Mac user, I confess, so using this is a little challenging too.
Sorry, guys. There.
I can maybe just look at here and then scroll through it. Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. I'll just yeah, it's about my work a little bit, and then I'll go into hers, and then discussion. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so while we're waiting for this, because I know I'm going through time here, the next part after this, because this was an influence, and I think it showed me, new touristic presentations and entertainment. And so I took that information into my own work and explored what it is and my own style as Jazmyne. Koch, as we say in the U.S., but Koch here. And so I will show you, going through my stuff here, some of my influences. So coming from this, briefly, so I wrote my whole name here, Jazmyne Masai Koch. So my last name is German, you can see visually, right? On the left hand, that's my dad. So he's American, German, Irish, British, I guess. That's what I found out. So he has that. He has American roots from Minnesota. Very interesting. And my mom, this is my grandparents and my mom. She's of Japanese descent, yeah? And they've been in Hawaii for many, many years through the sugar plantation and immigration. So I'm about 4th, 5th generation in Hawaii. So again, now I'm speaking that I don't have Hawaiian blood. But I've been really thoroughly and engrossed and interested in the Hawaiian culture. And so since I was 4, that's me, I started dancing hula. And I was in halaus for about almost 14 years, through and through. So this is just some images. The top is, I went to Mary Monarch, which is a huge competition for hula, and it's a very big honor to be a part of a competition like that. So those are my influences. I'm coming from that. I'm also coming from histories of Hawaii, war, paradise, romanticism, sovereignty, immigration, colonization. These are themes I work and look at in my work, in my performance. My style, this is just some clips of works I've done and past experiences. Going into my work, I consider myself an interdisciplinary artist. I use dance, media, spoken word, costuming, visual art. I'm also a choreographer. And my narratives I chose, so comparing to the Hawaiian ones, I do use stories of Hawaii, places, gods, goddesses, creation, beginning of creation. Also, I really play with contemporary narratives, and this is something I'm passionate about because it brings in my background. It's the realities of local Hawaii, the Hawaiian cultural realities, I would say, outside perspectives of Hawaii, as I play with exoticism and also paradise, and multi-ethnic cultural identity, which is also personal. So this is the question I ask when doing my work is, how would the contemporary person of a culture express his or her identity? So when I jump into work, that's how I present myself is, I want to be talking about present. I want to take things from the past and also think about future for things. But I'm playing more in the contemporary realm per se, and I'm very grateful that, there's traditionalists and there's Hawaiian students and also teachers that work in that realm, but I'm working more with contemporary and taking ideas. I have some clips, which I will just do at the end since it's complicated here. But I'll just show you some of my past work, a little bit of my current work. It's just a few clips of dance. And then I will just end here also with Dala Museum. Rosanna talked about it yesterday, and I was very, very grateful to collaborate on a project like this. And this happened, at the Dahlem Museum in Berlin. And this was the first work I've done in a museum space. And me taking, a space like this, like a stage or a theater, which is presented, I'm presenting something. This was, I could have the freedom of being in a space, of interacting directly with collections, of speaking with things, of going through the pathways that your audience is too. And this was super interesting, a level to work on, and was really refreshing. So I really enjoyed this, and maybe would like to continue looking at doing this kind of work. And I think this is really important. This is my ending slide. I like this one about that we're looking at the Akua, and I think with this collaboration, it also made me realize the importance of collaborating with other Pacific artists, or also, islanders, or also other cultural artists, indigenous works. I think it's all connects, and is also really refreshing to work with other people. And I think this is something that Hawaii needs as well. And I think this is one of my passions of why I'm out in a way, why I live in Germany, why I'm living in different places, is I'm trying to get impressions and also share about Hawaii, and also bring that back, because for me, I'm feeling that the contemporary work is not so strong as far as critiquing or having a voice about things. It's not so strong. They're just really more into the movement of doing their practices. And so this is something I'm hoping for the future. That's why I use New Zealand as a reference, because we look at other places such as that are really pushing with their contemporary works, as well as, within their the Maori culture and the other Pacific Islands, and also with the contemporary influences. And I'm really hoping that Hawaii, as we say, can also move towards that. And so I'm just going to end a quote from my presentation. That's by the scholar and anthropologist Apele Hau'ofa. I think it sums it up. Just as the sea is an open and ever-flowing reality, so should our oceanic identity transcend all forms of insularity to become one that is open, searching, inventive, and welcoming. And I think this is really important as far as collaborating in the contemporary sense. So I know I'm really short. I'm just going to show just a piece quick that I'm working on currently. And you can see just how I move, because I hope next time if I'm joining this that I can perform for you, but I just also like to speak and talk about it. But you can watch me on the screen. Okay, one more video, sorry. I escaped.
That's fine.
And, sorry.
That's fine. So, I'm going to go back over here. And which one?
This one.
There. And play.
So this is a rehearsal. And I'm using Hawaiian movements, if you know about some Kahiko tradition, but you'll see some contemporary movements too. And I consciously choose, also based on sound, how it feels in the sound, also what the message is saying. I like to combine them. Of an 8-minute piece I'll be doing about realities of Hawaiian sovereignty, and just playing with exoticism. So this is a 9-minute piece, which is also inclusive of the spoken word and some video media in the back. But that's just to give you a flavor of what I'm doing and playing around. And maybe you can watch me sometime. I'll do a performance. You can see me somewhere in Germany or somewhere around the world. But thank you for listening. I'll pass it on to Anne so we can move on. Okay.
Come on. So my name's Ann O'Dowd, and I'm from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, in the United States. I do about 10 events a year, ranging from the Northwest Tea Festival, we drink a lot of tea, to the Tattoo Expo. I deal with a range of supporting events, with 40 tiny ukulele players to Wu-Tang Clan. So I function as a stage manager. I deal with keys, parking, details, the tables, the chairs, the electricity, the canopies, all of those very specific things. And I see that I do logistics in support of the story of the artists. So my main festival that I work on pretty much year-round is the Northwest Folklife Festival. It's this year, this past May, it was in the 43rd year. And it was founded out of a desire to share traditional music of the Pacific Northwest, which originally started as kind of acoustic music, mainly out of the bluegrass and old-time Caucasian traditions, including storytelling, ethnic dance, craft, and food. The other piece to that is it was built in partnership with Seattle Center, which is a site of a Space Needle, which the whole site was kind of built out for the 1962 World's Fair. So 1972 was the first year of Folklife, and the communities then were working together with Seattle Center to activate the space in a way that was relevant to the communities of the Pacific Northwest. So our values, basically it's strengthening communities through arts and culture. And our mission statement is to create opportunities for all to celebrate, share, and participate in the evolving cultural traditions of the Pacific Northwest. And how that happens, these are our values. Folklife believes that the arts revitalize people and communities, dedicated preservation of cultural heritage, continued growth and development. And the piece that I think is really important is that everyone is a bearer of folk arts, and it's important to participate as it is to observe. And we encourage communities to share their cultural arts. And we rely on the diverse communities of the Pacific Northwest to put together our programs. And because of the way our mission is and what our values are, we focus on providing opportunities, and we provide breadth of opportunities. So it's not as much depth as, for example, Jazmyne and her focus on the Hawaiian and contemporary performance. What that means for our festival is it's the largest free community arts festival in the United States. We have, on a sunny weekend, if it's sunny in Seattle, which is rare, we have about 230,000 attendees over the 4 days. There's 22 stages or performance spaces, over 800 performance slots, between 800 and 900 volunteers filling 1,200 volunteer shifts, and a little under €1 million budget per year to produce this free event. And the other thing that's very cool about this is community is self-defined for the folks that we're working with. We work with community coordinators who put together showcases on our stages. And these communities can be ethnic or based around language, and they can also be associations or folks who are really into a particular kind of dance, like Scandi. We have bluegrass folks, Brazilian folks, reggae, folk punk, 206 Zulu, which is a hip-hop collective in Seattle, Balkan brass, Turkish, Hawaiian, Somali. We work with the Somali community. It's large. So this is a map of our site, which is particularly grainy, but we have about 40 food vendors, 200 craft vendors. There were 13,000 visits through our hospitality center this past year. We went through 50 kilos of coffee. We have about 175 radios on 8 different radio nets, 2,000 chairs, 28 days of programming if you were to watch it back to back to back straight through. So my role in this, I order all the chairs and I support the stages. I work with the programming team to find the best fit. They converse with communities, kind of get a sense of what it is that they're interested in presenting, and I help with the technical advance. So for example, this is from the Bagley. This is one of our largest theater space, which is a 830 capacity theater. This is from our Asian showcase. And often since it is there are open applications for this event, all of the performers are volunteers, which is another interesting piece to this. It's open, and there are a lot of amateur or non-professional artists who come in. And sometimes, especially in the theater spaces, especially with groups with large numbers of children, that can be something that we need. There's a logistical conversation that needs to happen around understanding that it is a family-focused event, but also when you have young people like 4-year-olds jumping on the rail, which is what holds the heavy theatrical equipment in the air, that's a safety issue. So negotiating how to use the space and what kind of support is needed. This is from our most recent cultural focus, which was India. And this is from one of my favorite showcases, the Hawaiian show. I think what I find so inspiring about this particular showcase is that it has been happening in the Bagley for, 15 or so years, and the staff that has been in that theater has been there for so long that they've seen literal generations of young dancers become parents, and now their young dancers are dancing, and there's children dancing in the wings, and it's an amazing, amazing sight to see. We have a lot of folk dance, both presentational and participatory. We have, I don't know if you can make this out, but this is a young person's, I think it's a jazz band, playing music for folks to do some partner dance. We have I don't know if you guys have heard of contra dancing, but that's very, very popular at our festival. There are folks who fly in from literally all over the U.S. There's folks who actually fly in from Hawaii to contra dance for 4 days. So another piece to this, the floor that they're dancing on is actually maintained and brought in by a committee of folks that hand load it onto the pallets that are then brought to the festival. They hand lay them, they tape it down, they maintain it for the 4 days, and then they take it away. And they've done this for years and years and years and years. I think on our website there's a stop motion animation or stop motion of how it happens, how the people dance. It's heavy, literally it's heavy, and it's an amazing sight to see. We also have, the focus on the traditional music. Jamming is an important part. So different, usually in the, I'd say bluegrass and old time communities, it's very important for us to create spaces for quiet and impromptu jam sessions, which is, again, a negotiation between the rock and roll stages and the jam spaces, as well as the street performers. So if you've got some bagpipes and marimba up against some violins, it turns out interesting. And again, that's a negotiation. And it also goes into the philosophy of kind of the heritage and passing on traditions versus the new or contemporary traditions. So we have folks who are jamming, and we also have our reggae showcase, which is at the Mural, which is one of our largest showcases, closes out Monday night. And so going between the quiet, kind of acoustic, not necessarily contemplative, but quiet and acoustic versus loud, amplified music is something that we work on. This is an example of one of the very folk life moments that we had at this past festival. Our festival takes place over Memorial Day, which in the United States is an honor to those who have fought for our country. And our presentation of the colors this particular year was done by the Air Force. And we had a Dixieland jazz band playing the national anthem, and we also had a modified grand entry of native dancers and drummers. So this was all happening concurrently. And I think with the history of the United States, I think it's really compelling that all of these folks came out in support of the same cause. And I think it speaks to the melting pot of the Pacific Northwest and what this festival does to bring folks together. And we also have what I would call hidden gem stages, which are a couple stages where we focus not exclusively, but it's a nice place to put contemporary art and art at loud volumes. So a lot of our indie rock and roll and hip hop groups are in places like the EMP, Experience Music Project, and the Vera Project. And the other piece to our festival, this is images of strangers taking hands and performing a dance together as instructed by the folks on the stage. We also have tiny buskers. So young people learning the traditions of their family and their communities and kind of passing that on. So it's fun to see. The street performers are not scheduled, which there's a difference between our scheduled performances and our unscheduled performances. And since it is an entirely free festival in a public park, it means that anybody really can walk through it. There's a high degree of access. But what that also, another piece of negotiation is the folks who are interested in protecting their First Amendment, and it's a political thing is relative. The First Amendment rights, so we have religious protesters who come in and want to rile up the public to some extent, or they just want to spread their somewhat intense message. And we also have folks who are interested in open carrying through the festival. So that's a Second Amendment right in the United States, which is the right to bear arms. So they are walking through with sometimes holstered, well, they have to be holstered guns, but it's something that we, with our security team, we negotiate every year. So we do work closely with the Seattle Police Department to just keep an eye on what that can look like. And the other piece to this is that it is funded pretty much entirely by donation. So folks donate at the door and support folk life. So I have a little video that was actually one of our fundraising videos, the last fundraiser we had, that kind of gives a little visual, more visual, and some music to better describe what exactly it is that I'm talking about. Let's see if it works. Nope. Yeah?
Michaels in Los Angeles says that her life goal is to get strangers to hold hands with each other, which I think is great. I mean, that's what square dancing really does.
There are Mormon shape note singers, there are Jewish shape note singers, there are atheist shape note singers, and we always say we leave our politics and our religion at the door. Our labor chorus is a community of people who are dedicated to raising their voices for justice.
Obviously I'm Indian, but dancing is a part that connects me more to the Indian community than anything else.
For me, All Ages is really about, and what Vera is also about, it's about people of all ages coming to enjoy the music that they like. Really, it's about everyone being able to share something together.
I try to teach the young people that nothing comes easy. It takes hard work. It takes dedication. It takes pure love for what you're doing.
Folk life is a big stage for any culture. So I hope that it continues to be our stage and everyone else's stage for a long time.
We really are grateful to have the showcase, because now that it's been there for so long, people wait for it from year to year.
In this world where we are, and I blame the civilization sometimes, you don't know who's your neighbor, you just see them, you hardly say them hello, you don't know what's in this big house, or you don't know what's in this small house. No communication, but through the cultures, we understand each other, we come close to each other, even we meet people. We feel happy, we talk, we say things that we want to say. It's like healing time, going to folk life.
So that's what I do, and I'm on the chairs and tables end of the logistics. So also, I think what is really rewarding about this is that while the programming team makes the initial connection to the communities, I'm the person who asks the questions of how exactly is this going to happen? How and sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes it's frustrating, but often it's rewarding and amazing. They're each different community that we work with, the different methods of communication. Sometimes English is not the first language. Oftentimes English is not the first language. And working with communities to kind of understand how they want to tell their story, what's the most important part. For the performers out there, we have about 15-minute turnovers between groups. So for the theater spaces, which are the highly sought after spaces, we have maybe a half hour of quiet time to load in whatever needs to be loaded in. So getting the details is very important, but also with that, we have the support of the folks and figuring out which staff people are going to be best for each type of venue, figuring out kind of not only the personalities and the vibe, but also the technical information as it needs to be presented, so that the technicians have the information they need to do their job and be excited about it, so that the performers have an excellent experience. So, and that's the world that I live in. So, so it makes for a wild ride when there's 22 stages going on at the same time. It's just like whack-a-mole, I guess. But it's part of the challenge. So, Elliot, excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anne and Jazmyne. So now we're going to have the Q&A discussion, part of the conversation. So if you guys want to, if you guys want to take a seat, I would say, oops, there we go. I can do this one first.
Okay.
Hi.
Yes, great. Okay, so, oops, no, there we go. Okay, so the idea of these seminars, again, for those who weren't here before, is to bring together two different speakers and put forth different ideas, and then hopefully they have questions for each other, there's space for dialogue, and then hopefully you guys also have questions, and then we can use I think the next, we have about an hour left, so yeah, and I'll ask some questions too. So once you guys have some dialogue, then I'll take one of the mics, and we can have some questions. There you go.
Lovely.
Lovely. Yeah, I would like to say I think it's a nice combination. I think for me, coming as an artist and performer, and then to have someone that manages groups of me per se. So it's good to get this perspective, and talking with Anne was really interesting. And so I guess one of my questions was coming through because we were talking about, the performances and the time that there is, also how much time they have to perform and to convey, as a community and a group to the rest at the folk life. Yeah, so with that presentation, I mean, do you find it, when it's short and there's like a lot going on, do some people miss the depth of the performance, of like how much they could explain or share about that?
And I think that is something that, again, I've used the word negotiation a couple of times in my presentation, and I think that's exactly what it is. And going back to the mission of Folklife, it's breadth. We're trying to give as many opportunities as possible. So that means that sometimes the depth is lost. And if there's visuals, if there's multimedia involved in the performance, that's not something that we can support. So again, that's a piece that occasionally is missing, and then it was growing out of the kind of lo-fi traditional music genre. It's bringing, as the traditional, as culture evolves and the traditions evolve, like we're moving towards having more tech time, and we're moving towards providing more backline and more infrastructure at the stages. But in doing that, it means that there are fewer opportunities because, again, we do have a limited budget, and that's part of my job. I'm like, okay, programming team, you would like to be in a theater for another day. That means we need to cut hours out of these other types of presentation, like our small acoustic stages versus our being in the large theater versus the small theater. So it's tough. It's a negotiation. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to take this question.
Just do it.
Okay. I had another one too with, we were talking about, how long the festival has been going, and you were also describing as in the backgrounds, how is it switching from, different generations, because it started, with this idea, and then now we're moving with younger people getting involved, and they have ideas too on how to change. And so how has it been?
A negotiation. I think that, and it is, like I said, there's our kind of hidden, our louder stages tend to be our kind of ones that are tucked away. And I think it is something that's really interesting right now as we're going into our 45th and 50th festivals. There are folks who are really, really important in the community who are starting to pass on and talking about with the precedents that we're setting about how we're remembering the folks who've contributed to folk life. I think that's something that I'm particularly interested in. And then also the idea, and I think you can probably speak to this too, talking about everybody having a place at the table. And I think your words were, close to your words, were there's the folks who are preserving the language and preserving the traditional dance, and then there's the people who are bringing that tradition into the future and fusing it, which is, I think, what your work speaks to. And it's a negotiation. Yeah. Yeah, it is fun. It is really interesting when we're working with new communities and we're communicating with folks and folk life has a very quixotic, very specific way of doing our advance and kind of not necessarily putting things in boxes, but kind of making sure that the groups fit within the specifications of venue and figuring out, well, is this the best venue for this? And figuring out where the best spot for it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Should we ask more questions?
I'm sure I probably have a question for you.
Ask, please.
Yeah.
Okay. This makes longer. Okay. So I have one question that both of you have somehow touched on, is this idea of, which has been a theme also throughout the conference, is this idea of preservation and contemporary lived realities. And I think it's really interesting, and also that, there's this thing with like hip hop, and I know that, for example, Jazmyne as well as Allison perform hip hop, and I'm really interested in this, and I think there's some negotiation around how this interacts with heritage, but it's actually unfortunate we didn't have our speaker from Spain yesterday morning who was talking about contemporary art and the construction and when something becomes heritage or contemporary heritage. So I think that's maybe an interesting point both of you can talk about, because I know for folk life, it's something around what's allowed to be considered folk arts, which is basically performed heritage or intangible heritage, specifically within the U.S., and then Jazmyne, also within your work and how you negotiate that with, if you're in a traditional performance space, if you're allowed to be a contemporary artist or something, and what is expected of you just in contemporary spaces as well. Yeah.
I think there's the technical side of working with hip hop, which is for me literally is making sure we have the right equipment and the right communication around the needs, the right communication around how many people are going to be backstage. I've worked a couple events where the communities that I've worked with in Seattle arrive en masse in a space that's maybe the backstage space is maybe the size of this stage. There's 30 or 40 people, and when it comes time to sorting out who's on stage and what instruments are being played and whether they've necessarily rehearsed together, as a technician, that is very frustrating. So on that side, from my personal experience, a lot of communication is needed because it's not quite the same. It's not the same instrument, usually the same instrumentation as plugging it in is like, this is a rock performance where, drums, bass, whatever. And this is a dance performance where there's clear stage. It's like there needs to be space for both. And I think also folklife does come out of a kind of Caucasian European beginnings. And I think that hip hop is new to a lot of our core constituents and our kind of people who've been involved with folklife for a really long time. So it's being introduced slowly, and I think being able to tie it back to its roots in capoeira in Brazil and the jazz music in Seattle, as well as, and it gives it a sense, being able to make those direct connections gives it a sense of maybe legitimacy as a folk tradition, because you can see the progression of how it has developed over time. But it is new and it is loud, so our jammers are sometimes not as excited about the loud music. Basically, I spent 2 days of this past festival telling all the stages to turn down and swapping out amplifiers to make them smaller so that all things could have a space at the table.
Yeah, boy. Take it away. Okay, yeah, so I guess switching to my work, I would say, for my space, as far as being in traditional spaces, so I would put my current situation that I live in Germany, and I think this is also a good move for me as far as expression, because it gives me more freedom. And I talked about in my presentation of the roles of protocol and different things as you're dealing with culture, and also being respectful. And so I'm coming from the place of respecting tradition, but I'm working in the field or the genre of hip hop and contemporary movement, because this is, I feel, the voice of people that I can relate to. It's a voice of also freedom. A lot of artists go towards this as a platform of sharing and also making connections within cultures, and also a place to express. Because if I just go up and do a traditional hula and then I don't have any reference and I'm not saying anything, then I'm going to run into trouble. And so what I do is I have to negotiate, and also with heritage I have to understand my own heritage and where I'm coming from, understand the cultural heritage that I'm dealing with, that I choose to involve my work in, which is Hawaiian, and part of my work that influences it, and to just be respectful. And also, as far as space, I need more contemporary platforms for now. I think it's going to take a little bit until I could maybe perform my work in Hawaii. I'm not sure how it will be taken, and this is going to be an interesting thing, I think, returning back and doing the work I'm doing. Maybe it will be accepted right away, I don't know, but maybe it's something that also people just need time for that, or I'll probably get questions, but but that's the part of the process, And I will just give an example of the creative director that I worked with, Peter. He works with hula and also modern and ballet, and that's his educations in those areas, and he does fuse it. He does have the cultural backing of people on his side, but he also has his haters, and that's just in the business. And so he understands that, but that's his work, and he chooses that he likes to present stories of today and make this documented of what contemporary Hawaiians, what his background is in 2014, And so this is the thing, and I choose to, in my work, to present my cultural realities, and also I think my experiences and path, and in 2014, and as I proceed. And so I would like to speak and make a heritage, I would say, this kind of expression to write narratives and stories for now. Yeah. Hope that answered.
Oh, thanks, you two. First of all, I was going to ask you, Anne, and actually the first thing I was going to say is don't just say that you work with tables and chairs. Because it's obviously so much more in depth than that, because you're dealing with all those different energies and peoples and egos and stuff. So don't say that ever again, please, because it's a huge job that you do, and I totally understand the negotiated spaces and working with communities too that maybe aren't used to working in terms of massive logistical events when they're just sort of only looking at their own little piece of the jigsaw puzzle. But actually, it was just when I was looking at the Native American dancer in there, so just relating back to experience in Aotearoa, any major festival or any festival that happens in Aotearoa needs to acknowledge the tangata whenua, the people of the land who hold the mana of the land. So I was wondering if that was a part of the folk festival in terms of the local tribe and acknowledging that space as you know, an indigenous space and as a shared space.
So my understanding is that the Seattle Center space was actually a Native gathering space prior to what it became in the World's Fair, and that is something that working with the Native communities in the Pacific Northwest. We also have some Inuit dancers as well, and we work with a variety of tribes. I think that we did actually have a I think it wasn't a full powwow, it was a presentational dance that was on Memorial Day that was put together by one of our board members. And it came together very last minute, and we found a space, and we are, I think, going to be working with them in the coming years. But again, it goes back to the, I guess, negotiating of space in the sense that since it did come together so late, making sure that the orders were correct in terms of their literally the tables and chairs and tents, making sure that since it was a late ad, the budgets were kept to. So there's kind of a, I don't know, the Western idea of like very specific time management, and then a freer idea of taking up, I don't know, I'm not necessarily articulating this well, but I think that is really important, and I think that is something that we are working on.
Yeah, like in New Zealand, for instance, you would have like a lot of festivals, they would work with their own cultural advisor. Mm-hmm. So I always kind of go, it's sort of like health and safety.
Yes.
And I call it cultural safety, because it develops up that, actually it protects you as well in terms of who you are working with, and those who does have the right to speak on those lands. So, yeah, so Pacifica Festival, which is a huge festival in New Zealand, that was the same. It was the Pacific Island people, but they were creating a space, but we first had to go to the local Māori tribe. Even before the first table and chair was thought about, the cultural protocols were put in place at first, and they opened and closed the whole festival, and then really they were just, and that has become a standard practice now that goes through even all what we call the Pākehā, even all the, you know, the others, so all the others festivals, and even like I was just at this big festival called Splore, which is like 4 days of everything from hip hop to drum bass, and it's on the beach. But the local tribe again are always acknowledged. They open the show, and they have, and they're treated it as esteemed guests. But I was just like, wow, because that wasn't in the kind of standard, well, it's so normal now, I suppose is what I'm trying to say, and 20 years ago it virtually didn't exist. 15 years ago it was creeping in, and now it's, you know, actually standard practice at really, really big festivals. So, you know, it'd be really something I'd say to really encourage in terms of, you know. And just the other point I was going to make is, do you guys have much resistance to the word folk? Because I know in Old England, if you say you're doing a folk festival, they just kind of go, oh, never mind.
There's people, some of the communities that we work with are like, this is only folk. And it is the idea, I think, my understanding of the idea of the folk that you're talking about. There are people who are super into it. Those are the jammers. The people who are the more. We have a group of Morris dancers that come from Canada, and they come from all over to do particularly English folk dance. So I think for us, it's more on the other end of the spectrum of expanding folk to make folk cool. I think it's amazing.
I think it's really special what you've done. I think it's really great, and how you actually are expanding the notion of folk with hip hop and stuff. I think that's really
my favorite phrase is redefining folk since 1972. That's my phrase. But to speak to your earlier point, we being the programming team who I support, work with community coordinators who are folks in the community who know the folks of that community and are kind of take on kind of a very important organizational role on our behalf to kind of get a sense of what the story that the community is trying to tell, so that especially for our theater showcases and the more technically complicated showcases, we have someone particularly to go to and ask questions of, and they can give us feedback in terms of what would improve their experience and what would be culturally appropriate in terms of communication and presentation. So, and we have, I think we've done a couple cultural focuses, which are basically a spotlight on a particular community. I mentioned that India was our most recent, but we had one on urban Indians in 2008, so that's Indians living off the reservation, was how that was framed. And then we've had a couple prior to my time as well. So it's a community that we do work with, but I think based on my knowledge, the formalization of the process of that you were speaking about with the opening and closing ceremonies isn't something that we have, like I said, formalized. Yeah. But I think you're right.
Alison Warden, hello.
Hello.
In Alaska, it's a relatively new practice of the people in Anchorage are the Dena'ina people of the land, so there's not a huge population of Dena'ina people. I mean, there's a lot of Athabascan people, but a lot of Native people are from all over the state, so then there's like 2 or 3 Dena'ina individuals that keep maybe 4. And and they're very sweet, and they are the ones that get called on. It's a fairly new practice of just reaching out to these people and saying, hey, we're going to have a conference or something, and can you come to the opening and say a quick blessing? And they usually, 100% of the time, they're just like, oh, wow, yes, we would love to. Thank you. Thank you for asking us. And so it's becoming more commonplace, and they've just been so nice about it, or I can't do it, you know, and then maybe one of the other 4 people that have been identified by the community as people who, you know, are good at doing these things. So it's kind of a new thing, and more organizations, it's mostly Native organizations that have been really attuned to it and consistently asking them to do things. But now more other non-Native organizations are, you know, calling on, oh, maybe we should do that, you know. That's, let's ask someone from that culture to say something in the beginning. But they don't do so much at the end. Anyway, and so I started a band. Well, I didn't start it, but there's 3 of us. Anyway, I said, well, we should name it from something from this land. And so I asked my friend who is Dena'ina and to help me come up with a name. And he was super, super honored that we wanted to name our band in the language of the land. So for the most part, you know, when you approach the communities, they're like, wow, you guys are awesome. You know, it's just like they're really overjoyed when they hear these kind of requests and really, you know, like take it seriously, and it really makes them happy. So sometimes there's a perception, like when I was starting my band, like, oh, maybe they'll think I'm trying to, you know, make fun, or, you know, like not be respectful, or maybe, you know, having a band named after something in the language, you know, it's maybe they won't think I'm taking it seriously, but they totally were, wow, that's a really great request, and let me help you figure out the right name, and we did. And so it was like a blessing, and it was just a way to showcase the language. So I'm excited to hopefully hear you guys, you know, think more about that.
Absolutely. I will definitely bring that back to our programming team. We don't have an opening ceremony, believe it or not. We just go. We just start the music, and we're like, is it up? Is it happening? All right, the tiny children are playing the thing. Awesome, great. Okay, on to the next thing. That's my experience. But the image that I showed is our really only formal ceremony. So, and I think the wisdom that you 2 have brought me today, I will absolutely take that back to Seattle. Yeah.
You can even say there's lots of good, you know, you can actually, even it's helpful, you can actually say there is, you know, other countries and other festivals that, what's the word, not protocols, but they've actually got sort of foundations that you guys can build on, so it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel. But I think it's really, really important when you're doing things in a country just to help acknowledge the tangata whenua, the original people of the land, and just help build up that community spirit, especially with the folk. You know, so it's because it's really exciting what you guys are doing. It's fantastic. Should come. Stop it.
You should come.
I think it could be just a really quick acknowledgement. You know, even if it's you can't get someone from the reservation to come. You know, like, hey, we are starting, and maybe everything's starting all at once, and this is just one little stage, you know, so, you know, everything's starting all at the same time. It doesn't have to be this huge formal thing, but on this one little stage, in this one little area, and everything's going at the same time, we are going to say this, and we acknowledge the people of the land to host us here, and thank you. And we wanted to try to get someone from the land to say something, but we couldn't find one or something, you know, but we just want to acknowledge that we're on indigenous land, and traditionally this was used in this way. And something quick, you know, it really makes an impact. It goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that is really important.
I just wanted to comment. I think it's really interesting also to be having this conversation here, because a lot of this has to do with like post-colonial context, and this is, I don't know, this is like a negotiation that is specific to these kinds of spaces. And it's interesting to be having this conversation. Maybe, Jazmyne, you even want to talk about what it's like for you to live here in those dynamics, because I think in organizing this this event, there's like, I'm coming from the U.S., so I grew up in a post-colonial context, and Katerina's from Italy, and she's having a different perspective. So we have really interesting conversations based on our cultural backgrounds and how we perceive even the world in these issues. So, and I know there's, you know, our partner organization, Oriental Heritage Without Borders, and there's different cultural perspectives here. So, I'm just thinking, you know, because we've talked about even opening Innovate Heritage and having, we had an opening ceremony with our partners, and we're going to have a closing ceremony and stuff, but we had a conversation about, like, maybe we should invite people to do some kind of, like, ceremony or some, I mean, you know, whatever, and just people participating and helping with the welcome. But it's interesting because in Germany, on this land, like, how does, I mean, I'm not from here also, so do you get, like, a Berliner to come? I don't know, it's just interesting when you think about who's indigenous on land when it's when you look at colonial histories in Europe and stuff. I don't know. These are just things that we've also been thinking about in relationship to the ideas of how Innovate Heritage is structured as an organization. So I don't know if anybody has any ideas or if you want to respond. Maybe Jazmyne, you also have some thoughts about what it's like for you living in Germany and these kind of ideas. I don't know. Yeah.
I think for me it's an interesting position because also who I am and what I am is because of colonialization, meaning, how the process was, and so why my mom's side is where they are in Hawaii and the chance that my dad's going to Hawaii and different things like that, and that I came into this world. So I'm living with this kind of I would say with these themes or with this kind of colonial aspect, and also being aware of what it was before as far as the land in Hawaii and is with the Hawaiians. And so this is, I think, an interesting thing. I feel it needs to be talked about more, but just to give an example, I guess, for my perspective of living in Germany now, it's it's interesting because there's I would say a lot of interest. And first the question that they go when I meet someone and I say, ich komme aus Hawaii, and they're like, oh, you're coming from Hawaii? Why are you here? That's the first question. I'm like, yeah, that's a good question. But I mean, chances happen, and also, I mean, for various personal reasons I came here, but I think the huge benefit of being in this space, and also as we talked about, I think also in Rosanna's work about looking at Germany's colonial past as well, that it's an interesting time to be here to just bring up these ideas again and also share I think this part of the world, which I would just label as specific right now, but to be, in a way, a representative of this, because I am here and I'm present, and I can just speak from my experience. And this is kind of why I'm in Germany, I feel, is, okay, I'm getting the message that it's important to share who I am and what it is with people here. So, yeah. I don't know if you have anything to say. Post-colonial.
I think that I feel like every time we start talking, I need to start having a conversation about post-colonialism. I need to go read some theory. That's what I think. I need to go read some theory, and I need to just talk to some folks and watch more performances like Allison's, and watch more performance lectures like Rosanna every time. And I think that I'm in a really interesting place of almost power, in the sense of I help figure out how to tell the story, and I think that I need to do more work.
I mean, your role's really important because you enable things to happen. So without people like you, artists would not have that luxury of being able to have a platform. And a lot of what I say a lot is recognizing that everybody's got different roles to play in whether it's in the museum world or the academic world or even like the folk festival. But without all those different roles, it wouldn't, it wouldn't be able to actually happen. So it's like never to undermine or that position that you have, and just in those little things, those little gems that you can take back. And sometimes it's just one little thing. So don't get too much theory. Just go back to the festival and and get some action on. Yeah. Because it can really, because you've had a lot of experience with the festival from what I can see, and I've no doubt that you'll have a lot more too. So not only are you able to enable other people, but actually to enable your own position to grow within the festival as well. And it's quite interesting too, just on the you know, I have a lot in common with Jazmyne, which is why I approached her when I met her in Fiji last year. And, you know, I really understand what it's like to be from somewhere else and then to be geographically resituated, and the effects it can have on your work and the way you have to question yourself and your values and who you are, because a lot of times you're having to constantly put yourself into a context because nobody knows the history or even where it is. And yeah, so I mean, it was really, but it was, which is why I reached out to you, because I was really pleased that Jazmyne was close enough and actually brave enough, and you know, because I offered her nothing. It was pretty much what I was getting, but it was just. And that's a very Pacific Island way of working too. There's a lot of we. There's not, you know, and actually it's why I'm interested in the heritage versus arts. You know, as they say, arts is quite an individual expression, whereas the heritage is more of the communal space that and the artist, the role of the artist, you know, kind of is about helping us look at things in different ways. As is the role of the academic, as is the role of the people that actually make sure that everything is in order so that we can actually do it. So they're all really important roles, and it's interesting that post-colonial has come up in this. And how do you define in a world like this, you know, who to acknowledge? Because I thought you guys were really clever in acknowledging when I saw this, that you're having an opening ceremony. Because then you get this other thing, we call it dialer komatua. So you just dial an elder, you know, what are you doing on Friday night? Can you come and open this thing up? You know, and it almost seems like that, you know, we kind of wheel them in, they do their and then they go off again, you know, so it... And that's sort of that's the danger when you haven't got an in-depth relationship, that, you know, and that's why I was very impressed with you guys, because you actually you went for the people that you have a direct relationship with, not some outsider that's come in, but people who actually, you know, are influencing and responsible for Innovate Heritage too. And I think it's a really good foundation. In England, for example, there's a Maori group, Ngāti Ranana, so we're the tribe of London. And in New Zealand House, that's considered our marae, our sacred space, and we bring whoever comes into our space, we pōwhiri on in traditional haka pōwhiri. But then I used to sort of get a little bit frustrated, because then that's our space, that's New Zealand space, but then we get invited to do these openings outside the space in London. But I keep pointing out to even my own people, going, this is actually not actually our land. So why are we? So, and it was quite interesting, because I actually had to make our own people think too. What are the cultural dynamics going on here? I mean, it's quite, you know, it's good, but it's, I was like, so we did one celebration, and I actually was like, well, how do we acknowledge the people of the land in England? So it's a really, because actually, if you really want to get down to indigeneity in terms of genealogical and geographical, then you have to go to the English people, but they're usually the colonizers. So it really starts doing your head in. But yeah, we actually did work with a group of sort of, what are they, druids, people who are some of the holders and the bards who are the holders of, I mean, it would be called indigenous knowledge in any other format, but because it's English, it's called folk knowledge. You know, they know the local histories of the land, and we met on Primrose Hill, and they welcomed us into their space, and then we responded as guests on their land. And now it's something that happens every year. So again, it's that established, you know, the relationships are so important. But I was not.
You have a question. Super. Okay.
So you talked about that for 42 years they have been making this festival, right? How has it been the impact of the festival in 40 years? Like, it has been, exist another impact and other activities that go from this big activity that is the festival around the year, or is it just one activity one time per year?
That's a negotiation. I think in the past 6 or so years, we've tried to do more year-round programming, but through the course of the festival, through our cultural focus program, the Seattle Center also has, through the city of Seattle, they have a program called Festal, of which Northwest Folklife is a part, and that there are communities that in some of them have worked with Folklife and have had kind of that organizing experience at Folklife has been a galvanizing force within their community, and now they go on to become a part of Festal, so Seattle Center and the City of Seattle funds these programs to some extent, provides them the space and labor to have their own kind of smaller versions of Folklife. So they'd have, 4 or 5 stages, and the communities would put together with support at Seattle Center whatever it is that they wanted to showcase to tell their story. So I'm not super versed on how many there are, but it's a full slate of events. There's a Festal event happening at least monthly, probably bi-monthly, and some of those communities have come out of their direct experience working with Folklife. So I think that is really cool. And additionally, we are kind of workshopping programs to, we most recently worked with the Somali community in the Pacific Northwest to help them create a community showcase. So we got, Folklife was the fiscal sponsor, and our development team wrote some grants to get funding for this project, and it was a learning experience on both sides. And the Somali community is actually very large in the suburbs of Seattle and SeaTac. There's different kind of I'm trying to remember what they're called, but just like apartment blocks that are just like all Somali. They're all Somali, and they live in the community that I observed. They also were struggling. In some cases, there were very new immigrants, and they were trying to sort out their visas. They were trying to sort out food. They were trying to sort out clothing and shelter, and to also bring art and have the Somali community that has come to Seattle work with their young people to teach them the dance and teach them the song, that they are not to kind of preserve their cultural heritage, but keeping the parts transplanted to the Pacific Northwest. It was an amazing experience. Technically, it was very frustrating for me because I was calling a show that was not written, and it was in Somali, and I had seen it once. So I was working on making sure that the right microphones were on, making sure that the lights went on and off. We wound up, since it was extemp, it was not written, we wound up needing to stay on time for the performance because we could only rent the space for a certain amount of time. We had to cut out like 2/3 of the second act, with folks who hadn't been in a theater before. There's actually a video that was made of this on our website, and it's amazing. There's this image of this young woman who had never been on a theatrical stage before, and she's wearing a mic for the first time, and she's testing it. And I think for the folks who were involved, it was an amazing experience. And it was really about telling the story of the folks. And what they wanted to present. So, and that I think is the power of Folklife, and a project that, assuming that we can get funding for that again, which is difficult. We have a pretty small staff. We have like a full-time staff of maybe 6 people or so, and we staff up for the festival, of course. But funding is definitely an issue for us.
You are going to my second question. So how is the funding related for you guys? Is always private, or is it public and private?
It's public and private. We have a really generous contract with the city of Seattle through Seattle Center to work with. We have a certain amount of labor that's donated in kind, and we have use of the venue. And then we have some sponsorship. We have a percentage of our merchants and sponsors. We take a percentage of their sales, or they donate to us a percentage of their sales. But really, it's folks, people coming to the festival, donating at the gates, and donating just $1, donating the coins in their pocket. And sometimes they donate $100 bills. And we do have a donor program as well. But if it's a rainy festival, it's I'm like, my God, can I have a job? It's, and the funding in recent years, the grant funding is a lot smaller than it used to be, and the sponsorship is more difficult to attain because of the economic issues that we've been having in the United States and worldwide also. So funding is always an issue. So our budget for stages is ridiculously small. It's ridiculously small. But we try and cram in as much as is feasible to give as many opportunities as possible.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? We're getting to the end, I think, and maybe we can wrap up here. Oh, I'm getting feedback. We can wrap up here and go to the break, and then after this we'll come back for a lecture. I believe it's from Daisy Sitcliffe, who will speak about Jurassic Coast. Thank you very much to Anne and Jazmyne for the presentation. Thank you for the Q&A. Thank you.